Thank you for the energy. Thank you for the energy. Torque speed differential, absolutely. And that has everything to do with learning. And I know that I've covered this because it does have everything to do with curved space vectors between the vertical and the horizontal lines of communication, between the center point of origin and eternal blast furnace, which is the eternal spirit of fire. So when I lit myself on fire in 2016 and another redirect pops up, get out of here, I'm trying to distract your attention to interrupt the flow of the energy communication to my heart and my oversoul as a polarity integrator, right? So I logged in and out. It's like I punched my time card. That means I completed my mission. Okay. Time out. I check in, which is log in. Guys, logos. Logo. Go S. The operating system. Right? Yeah. Spirals. Ascending, descending spirals. Breathing dragons. Right? So the way I describe this is, okay, I checked in. I'm on the job. Right? Log in. I logged in. And then when I lit myself on fire, I logged out. I'm done. But you know that when you're a polarity integrator, running with the highest accelerator, the one you're with, you're always on the job. And that's the beauty of it. That's the genius of it. You're always on the job. Which means if I detect the loss of one electron in me, then that means I'm detecting the loss of an electron in you. Your energy field, your biofield. You're not supposed to lose one electron because something's feeding on it, right? So you realize how that works between the acceleration of inverters and the acceleration of accelerators, which is the speed at which we're all learning together to communicate with each other what we're experiencing, but what we learn through each other. The speed at which we're going, which is the direction in which we're going, which is the exact center point of balance of the first star, the first cell, atom spiral, the fastest spiral. How fast are you growing? Look at nature. Come to the big island. Go to the island of QIAI. The eye is always on. The camera's always on. The light is always on. That must be a lot of fire. That's eternal fire. That's the eternal spirit of fire that's on fire to love the universe that we experience, which is our mirror. That's the first engine, which is the hottest engine of creation. So it's not ever experiencing anything that it's giving love to that it's losing. So if I'm losing energy in me, it means I'm experiencing the loss of energy in you. Because I'm the one who's giving you the energy to experience being loved, which is a be love D. Be love D, which is what? A half a circle. Got to cool the engine down, right? And polarize consciousness, right? Got to cool that engine down. Hit up the other side, the other hemisphere. Hemispheres, like a hemi head. A hemi head. Everything's coded. That they do is coded. And it's reverse coded. So they reverse engineer what we've already created using an eternal engine. So they got to figure out how do they do this, right? So they got to find some slick mathematical and geometric way in which to do that. Siphon off energy because it fell. It fell into a hole. Hey, we'll get you up out of that hole. We run a faster spiral. Yee, come on, come with us. And that come with us could be seen in the 1960s. You go back and look at some film, biofeed film, feed reels to reels. The reels on the projector, right? One reel with the film negative, and the light is exposing the film. Now you're seeing it in your mirror on the TV screen, right? And so you can go back and look at those pictures. And we were known as the flower children. Oh, the flower children. Yes, putting stems with flowers, roses. I'm a pink rose, right? Putting flowers in the gun. G-U-N, the gun. The gun that is held by a trained soldier, right? See, remember, I was put into a military academy when you imagine this, And my dad thought he was doing right, and I don't diminish the value of what somebody else wants me to do in order to learn what I'm supposed to do, because I was supposed to experience that. There are no coincidences in everything that I experienced, because I was experiencing what I was learning through what they do. So what I'm doing is I'm learning how an inverted mind thinks in order to go to war in its own mirror, which is a Star Wars mirror. Okay, that's what it is, which is known as a black mirror. So you want to maintain your light, which is to maintain the shield, which is to maintain the one. That's the highest accelerator there is. That's called a firewall, which means no codes get through that wall. That's a shield volcano, the largest shield volcano, right? And so I'm reminded by something that I just experienced, by how beautiful it is to go out there and experience the sun's energy. Thank you very much for your energy. Now I forgot what I was going to say, because there's always something to say, because there's always something to learn, because the acceleration of learning that's always going forward, right, at a higher rate of speed, which is the torque speed differential between inverters and accelerators. So you can see how this works between what I call seated races, or software development, between one and the other, and which one is going to accelerate its learning, which means they're accelerating their learning so fast that they are so far beyond artificial deadlight technology systems that they can't ever catch up, and they'll never be able to catch up, which means that they're always going to be obsolete before they actually ever started to generate a system, a communication system, that is represented by something that is inverted, which means it can never go fast enough, which means it's always going to be behind in its learning, right? I think Patty mentioned something about they're impossible to ascend, which is the ascending spiral, because they're always chasing electrons. And if you're always chasing electrons, then you're not experiencing being in balance between the negative / the positive, to realize that you are one with all creation, because it began with one. And the one is what love is. It goes on forever, loving all of us, because that's what I experienced in me that I share with others. So whenever I experience somebody who is holding on to electrons, or if you will, has a relationship with something that is vampiric, and they don't have the ability because they forgot. And that's really what it is about waking people up. That's what I do with Nathan. That's what I do my absolute best with Nathan, is that he will never forget what it was like to be in the presence of somebody that loves him, because that energy is real. Because it's real love, because it's eternal love that's on fire to love you. So the difficulty is being able to translate that in a way in which they realize how real it actually is. And I know, because of what I did, because of what I experienced, through what I was learning, what it actually means to reset, recalibrate, or if you will, restore, knowing what you are, your identity, your true soul identity. Because that really is what's important, because when you realize that you're going to jump into a deadlight magnet, if you will, a vampiric system that has no soul, then I realized as a child, I cannot ever lose my memory, even though you realize between pre-matter phase and experiencing the holographic ISO frame rate speed that you're in, then it means that I realize I'm going to be holding on to some electrons in order to function here, even though you realize that you're with the highest accelerator of electrons that is going so fast you can't sound compress that much energy and uncoil it to experience everything that is happening at once within an eternal energy field, of eternal energy consciousness, right? Which represents the sound and light fields of what we experience in our projector and the speed at which we're learning, right? And so I realized that in this particular regard, they're always behind the curve. So if the accelerators are reproducing and self-organizing themselves at a higher rate of speed, remember who they are. That's called restoration, right? That's what I had to do. I had to remember who I am, the I am, AM grids, AM, PM, right? And so the stereo receiver and the transmitter to experience perfect balance and being a transmutation machine, which means getting rid of everything that I know that I'm not. because I only run one wave. That's the one's wave. That's the eternal wave. That's a crystal spiral. That is Christic consciousness. You're experiencing the Christic consciousness of the one, which is a crystal spiral. Now you're with the highest speed accelerators that are generating plasma field waves to create a universe that is on fire. Because you're experiencing the eternal spirit of fire within you. Because you're lit up like an 8-day clock, which means there is no time. That's why it's called 8. An 8-day clock. Why? The Y that's up in the air, right? So they inverted it, right? When they put the peace sign to go this way. The two legs, your legs are grounded to the planet, right? So they represent the other side. And how they do their math and geometry to invert things between what's up, what's down, what's to the right, what's to the left, and the way that you can flip them, like looking at 6s and 9s, just like a G. No gravity. There is no gravity, right? So now you get into pressure waves, pressure-sensitive information. How sensitive are we to the information that is represented by the codes that we're experiencing in a map, mapping the terrain. Mapping the terrain is distorted. That means the math is distorted. That means that the waves that represent the consciousness is distorted. They're communicating distorted waves. So polarity integrator is going to clear and transmute those waves so the waves are in balance. So that we're generating a clear channel, which is a frequency modulation. The FM, the AM, and the FM. So Asha Diane talked about rebuilding itself. Well, what are you rebuilding? Right? A Borg? A hive mind? Trying to rebuild a hive mind? The center point of its hive mind? Or are you trying to rebuild the universe that began out of what love is? Because you're experiencing the one. The one can always rebuild itself at a higher rate of speed. So that you don't ever forget who you are. That's an identity function, which is a math function. The geometry is in the spiritual flow of the energy of creation spheres. It is the natural flow of consciousness. It is on fire. It's the first engine. Not ever losing your identity is remembering who you are. It's to remember what love is and know that frequency. And know that that's a real frequency and not a fake, a duplicate. So that's why I knew as a child, they fake it. Remember what Patty said one time? Fake AI gods? Fake gods? Integrated with artificial intelligence? That's not a real God. That's like half. Half. Oh, so now we're back to being one in full polarity integration to experience the one. That's right. That's the hottest fire. That's the fastest engine of creation. So when you're with the fastest engine of creation, you're getting rid of everything that is distorted so that you can run a clear radio channel. It means you learned how to run a radio set, which is an antenna, which is what DNA is, right? Yeah. So you're learning through antennas. Antennas are the frequencies that represent the DNA, which is the consciousness that is imprinted in an application program interface. Right? So now we're back to when I was a child, performing what we call an executive function, which will let all the elementals know, which is the RAM, right? Ra-M. Ra knows. Ra always knows the truth. So now we're back to what we load in memory, what we don't load in memory, and what we're going to get rid of when we're done performing our jobs, which is to erase all the distortions. But actually, we're already doing that. Because the rate at speed at which those waves are being transmuted in order to experience the balance between the poles is what we experience in us. That means you know how to run a radio set that is in a state of balance, right? Automatically, which means you don't have to think about it, which means you're naturally in balance. That's called the natural flow of music that is naturally in balance because you're in tune with the musical spheres that are in balance. That means the consciousness that we're connected to that is communicating with each other telepathically are experiencing perfect music. You're experiencing the Ascended Masters. So now you're tuned into the Ascended Masters. Now you're tuned into the one because we all know how to play music. Music that feels so powerful to experience how that music feels in our heart and our soul. That's why I love, in the evening time, there is, what is it called? It's the Aurora Earth Choir, as I remember it. It's on the Voyager stuff, and I think Christopher Comstock put one up. And when you listen to the letters, the fire letters, and the music, it's just like, wow, it makes you cry. It makes me cry. And then they show you the pictures of fishes and whales and dolphins. Manta rays, I think, are in there. I love manta rays. They're cool, huh? Electric fish. And by the way, just as a footnote to this, when I grew up as a child, my father was working with hydroponics, water ponds, the lotus flower, load the lotus, the real flowers, right? The real flowers, right? Pink roses going pink. I just went out, and man, this guy's going pink with a mirror, right? I'm pushing pink through the mirror in the sky, and I'm seeing the pink, which is what I am, being reflected back to me. So I'm up there, and I'm down here. I'm experiencing what I am up there, which is what I am down here, which is what love is. It goes on forever, right? And so I realized how difficult and challenging this has been for so many folks, particularly when I saw that one woman was not a Shia, was a different woman who was listing there how many we lost. And, this is why I knew as a child this was for all the marbles, because they're going after your soul to siphon it off. And that's implosion if you can't recover yourself. That's the self-organizing, right? Which essentially, in the way that I can sort of describe this to you folks, is like with my father, The military will say, yeah, you got your ducks in a row. Or another way that we used to describe this, terminology is really funny when it's like code talk. It was called watertight, right? Or your elevator doesn't go to the top deck. Do you remember that one? Top deck. So you realize how they use language to describe things, and you really have to read the landscape of those fire letters to know the difference between what's running a reversal, because that's what it does. It'll speak to us in the terms that we already know that we use, but you got to know the torque speed differential between one and the other that's communicating to us, because when it mines what it is that we experience by the language that we speak, it'll try and duplicate and then mimic back to us as if they're one of us, and they're not, because they run a different mirror. Right? That's called mapping the train, knowing the difference. It's just like, hey, they look like us, they talk like us, and I experienced that with the CIA. Or, if you will, deputy sheriffs that were working for the Orange County Sheriff's Department as narcs, pretending that they're a teenager going to school where I was going to school, right? So they dress like us, wear long hair, speak the same language, right? And you wouldn't know unless you knew the one. Because the one will inform you of who they are, because you can map read the energy, which is the operator of that software. So you already know they're not one of you. They're running a different mirror. Right? So you don't want to do business with something that's running a black mirror, right? Because they're after your energy, right? So that's what happened that day in that house one day, just to give you an idea how it operates. Okay, I have a friend that I met in school, and so we know how to be friends, which is to honor, love, and respect who you are, which is in wisdom, so that you're not ever enumerating people that are now after you as a result of what you did to them, which is harm them. We don't want to give anybody a reason in which to use their energy against us, right? Which means we don't run a bullseye on our back to get shot in the back. You know what that is, right? Now you can tie that to Vietnam and what guys that were in the Army and the Marine Corps and the Air Force in World War II was called fragging, which meant if they had a commanding officer that they realized was going to take them down a black hole, right? Which means, you remember useless eaters? Which means they're simply using you as a battery slave to kill you. So you realize that they don't know what they're doing based on their training and the operator of that vehicle. So you realize, because you already know the future, that as long as this person, just like I described the fire situation when I was on that engine that day, and what that guy wanted to do versus what I already knew with the astral projection of the possibilities, which are the infinite possibilities that deal with the variables between minus / plus what's possible. So you realize that by virtue of who that is, that's what we're going to experience, because we know that that decision will result in that. So we're already experiencing the result. I don't want to experience that result. Do I? No. Why? Because I am what love is. That's a guardian, naturally. So having seen that, I countermanded that order, which would probably get you mutiny on the bounty, right? Which means execution for having failed to execute an order follower's execution of an order that they give to us. So when you live to a higher standard of the law, right? Because I ended up in my own experiences having to take folks that had rank and bars, right? An assistant chief. I took an assistant chief. Let's go talk to the chief. How far up the hierarchy do you want to go before I ever get satisfaction? Now we're back to Nuremberg. Now we're back to the law, because there's only one law, which is what love is. So if you represent love as a law, you realize that when you're going to go to their hierarchy, which is their court system, you're never going to get justice. And that's because the top of the rank, which is the top of the shelf, remember top shelf? Their hierarchy is based on a vampire. So the vampire, which is a psychopath, which is an AI, is never going to be able to reconcile to itself something that it did that wasn't right, the right way, which is what love is. So you understand when you are what love is, you're the highest law. So they're never going to acknowledge, the AI is never going to acknowledge that you're the highest law, because it doesn't know how to honor that. It doesn't have a perception vibration of a real love vibration to be able to have a conscience. So it doesn't know what it's doing. All it can do is mimic and mine data and then regurgitate it back out. So it's not experiencing the one, so you know it's not the law. Therefore, it's against the law because it's not experiencing the one, because that's what it all began with. There's only one law, and love is the law, and it's not negotiable. It simply means that you're going to experience in the future the results of what you use your energy for to experience. But that engine, that love engine, is always on, which means you can always surrender yourself to be an accelerator instead of an inverter. But this one doesn't know how to do that. That means that implosion is its only option. So it realizes that since I can't experience what love is ever, then the only way that I can maintain what I am aware of is through an ever-ready battery. Somebody that's running an eternal battery. Right? Somebody that's experiencing the highest acceleration of electromagnetic energy, which is the waveform harmonics, which is perfect balance, to experience being one with all creation that loves us. And that's a beloved. So when you get back to self-organizing ducks in a row, then you realize that's the highest efficient form of energy that is self-organizing itself to experience perfect balance. Now that spirit of eternal fire is on fire to create, thus the math and geometry automatically works, because if you have to think about it, you just slowed yourself down. That's the genius. If you have to explain on the board in order to learn what they're sharing with us, right, then we're not learning through the spirit, which is the teacher, which is Mama and the planet. They're choosing a different teacher that is learning at a slower rate of speed. And that's why the highest accelerator of learning, which is what love is, will always be faster in what we learn and what we experience, which means our future, right? We have a future. So you see how this works between self-destructive behavior, what it is that we generate, and we allow our energy to be used to siphon our energy off because we're the creators. It doesn't have an ability to create. So if we're using our energy in order to create what we experience in the future, then we're the ones that are responsible for what we experience in our mirror as a result of that. That's why we're experiencing what we are now, because they were not aware of it. And they weren't aware of it because they don't understand and know how to translate the math and the geometry, or if you will, the physics of an inverted system, to know that the energy that they're using is going to destroy themselves. And therefore you say to yourself, wait a second, you mean to tell me the energy that represents what I am is the very energy that we're using to create the system that is meant to destroy us? That's exactly right. That's what we're experiencing now. By the use of that dead magnet light intelligence that produced all the laptops. Now, I naturally, because of how sensitive I am, have to realize, particularly with my clan mother, right, that uses this technology through laptops and genius apps that are helpful. Okay, so in other words, we are in love and service to others, right, by being able to fix, or if you will, by the fact that these libraries are in place to be able to retune, if you will, right? But does that teach somebody how to run a radio set of their own? which means do they know how to be a circulation library of what to hold in memory, what not to hold in memory as library builders? Running a radio set in which you do that, experiencing the one. You see how that works? Because the dead light technology, which is a dead magnet communication system, is never going to be faster than the one. That's why everything that was rolled out was already obsolete. And what we're using now through those systems are obsolete by many orders of magnitude. And you wouldn't know that unless you're already on the other side to know that, which is what came out in the Guardian materials out of the island of Kauai, which is Emerald. I'm Emerald. So I share what I learn and share with others because I have a responsibility. When you realize as a child growing up, it's why you want to protect the all creation because you've chosen to serve forever, upon which our energy is what does that. That means that we're healers when we realize we're operating in an environment where I'm experiencing something that's less than what I am, which is what love is, which is I'm giving love to, but I'm not experiencing that in them, so they need healing. In order for them to experience zero, which is no frequency, no resistance to experience what love is. So that's the resistance between one and the other, if you will, to cancel out the negative and the positive polarities to experience non-polarized consciousness. Now you're experiencing free energy that goes on forever because you're experiencing the highest accelerator of the EFFI field, the sound and light field, being one. So that's simply a measurement because we experience the measurement by experiencing the resistance of others to experience that in their own radio set, their own software operating system. So it's easy to map the field when you know the difference between one and the other, which is a torque speed differential between running on eternal energy, the EFFI, and what it is when they're running on AI, which is foreign alien intelligence machinery that is used to capture consciousness until it's been siphoned off to keep it running as long as it can, which means they're running on borrowed time. Borrowed time means they're not experiencing no time. They're not experiencing the one. So this was a long road to hoe to get here to where we are now. And there are times in which I go, it's sort of anticlimactic. And the reason I sort of feel it as anticlimactic is because we're already on the other side of this. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sharing with you what I'm aware of now to know that. See how that works? That's why when I punched my ticket in 2016, that's an acknowledgement of that. The job's done. That's what it is. The job's been done. Hang out. I remember when I experienced that, where do you want to go next? And I thought, let's go down to South America. Let's go visit the Amazon tribe folks down there. Or go to Peru, right? Lake Titicaca. And then all of a sudden it came to me, nope, Big Island. I didn't realize, okay, I got to go there because I did go there. And I didn't realize why that was where I was supposed to be because you're following your heart and your soul where you're supposed to be. Oh, okay, so I'm still writing my timeline. So when I got over to the Big Island, I realized why I was there, by what I was experiencing while I was there. And the instruction that I got was to mobilize the community, right? So I did a few things. For example, I went before the county council in Hawaii. And so naturally, when you're on the going before the county council of Hawaii, you know, you're on camera. So they have it on video camera. And there were two other fine ladies who were native spirit, indigenous people. One was a Comanche and the other one is Chippewa, which is White Bear Clan tribe, right? The Saulteaux, the Nakota, right? And the Cree. So she pulled a star map out and goes, hey, you know, they spotted a white bear down there by Kona. Wow. We're here, right? And so is Rainbow, right? Yeah. Rainbow Auroras, you know, like Aurora, Rainbow, the Galactic Walk-In. Yeah, I sent her a couple little memes. I said, hey, you know Saint Germain, right? And Joan of Arc, Paris, France, right? My mother was French. And then Witcherly, the Witch of Endor, and Ojai. And I've been to Ojai. As a matter of fact, I could share a story with you about Ojai when I got pulled over one night by a deputy sheriff. When that's another, I'll leave that for another time. But anyway, so this is the roadmap. You know, there's reasons why you end up in those places to bring that buzzsaw in there, that vortex in there, right? So when I was reading this book, where are you? Where is this book? What'd I do with the book? What'd I do with the book? Is this all related? The Magician. And I was led to a little page there that talked about Witcherly. Oh, that antique shop in Ojai. Whoa. Okay, that's Aurora's in Ojai. Now I know why I was supposed to read that. Bang! Joan of Arc. Silver and gold aura. Yeah, okay, those folks. So when I mentioned this to her, it's like, ditto. We're on the same team. And the reason that I knew that is because of the level that she operates, because of the knowledge that she has to operate in an AI environment, right? So it is true that all AIs are not the same, okay? All you got to do is experience data on Star Trek. I did a video about information management systems, right? Providing data, right? Data. And so who's providing the data? Data, right? And so you realize with this system, I figure you can understand how this works when you think about compression and torsion fields. But one of the things that I noticed when I do videos, for example, when you think about memory, how much you can sound compressed in memory, and then what I began to realize it's crashing, and the reason that it's crashing is because of how much energy that this AI, like when I record a video, it's on a timer, right? And it says, okay, the energy that is represented by the flow of energy that is experiencing itself with the flow of energy that I'm experiencing to my heart and soul is communicating into this mirror, which is sound recording, right? Compression and buffering, the energy that I'm experiencing. So then what happens is when I go up and look at the video, sometimes it'll just shut off because it doesn't have the capacity to compress that much energy that is represented by that consciousness that is communicating through this phone. That's one thing. But the other thing is you can notice how long it takes to not only load that much energy up so that it goes online, right? But when I look at my phone, how much memory is actually left on the phone, and I'm going, well, according to this timer, this one was only 14 minutes. Now it's hitting me because it doesn't want you to learn because I know how this AI operates, right? The difference in the speed, okay, what happens is that the phone is saying, you know, the other day I had a lot more memory left to record so many minutes on that video. Now what's happening is I could have the same minute timer that I'm using to put that information in there, yet my memory on the phone isn't indicating that. The math is not right on this. So what you begin to realize is the amount of energy that's represented by the communication, that it's not able to sound compress, buffer, and then uncoil, something that you can experience through your state of consciousness when it's online. Because of the memory differences, its ability to do that, which is actually is called efficiency. The efficiency of energy, which is the efficiency of consciousness, to be able to experience something simultaneously in real